1. Okay, so let's set the scene. It is 2007. I live in a gated subdivision that hugs a lake in a small town in East Texas. The main road within this subdivision goes from the entry gate into a mile-long circle and ends back at the gate. Most of the houses in the neighborhood sit on the lake, and the rest of the neighborhood away from the lake hadn't really been developed as much and was mostly wooded. All the other roads are within this circle, so very small. It is my birthday weekend. I am just turning 13. My best friend is staying the night with me. We wake up the following morning and decide to go on a walk around the neighborhood. Everything starts out fine, very normal. My family had lived in this neighborhood for about 5 years, so I felt very familiar with it. My brother and I rode our bikes around frequently, so we started walking down this long street. And we see in the distance this large black animal resembling a cat that was pacing back and forth across the road. Now, there had been a sign posted around saying that a large black panther had been seen in the area, so we immediately stopped. We decided, instead of going forward, that we would cut through the woods to a parallel street and continue away from the animal. So we continue on for a while, and then we start running into aggressive black dogs. Like in any direction we go, there is a black animal that seems dangerous. I start freaking out because we have cut through the woods several times. And now, I didn't know which way we needed to go to get home. I had my little flip phone at the time, so I tried to call my mom and see if she could come pick us up. In true fashion, my mom did not answer her phone, so I left a voicemail message giving the location, saying, "We're kind of lost, can you please come pick us up?" So now we're just like, okay, let's just try to figure out how to get home. We start walking and turn down the road, and then we come up on this tiny old abandoned house. It immediately struck me as odd because I had never seen this house before. There were no other homes on this road, and the house looked really dilapidated, broken windows, chipping yellow paint on the house, a cooked door on the hinge, super patchy grass in the yard. Basically any 13-year-old's idea of a nightmare. We ended up stopping right in front of the house and kind of gawking at it. I think we were both trying to wrap our heads around the fact that it felt like we were in some kind of horror movie. I think my friend kind of dared me to go up to the house or something. Obviously, that was not going to happen. Then the wind picked up and opened and then slammed the front door of the house. We immediately sprinted away from the house. Shortly after that, we got to a place that I was familiar enough with to know how to get us back home. Okay, so now we make it home. Just glad to have survived the whole ordeal. We run into the house and I immediately confronted my mom about the fact that she did not answer her phone, and we needed her because of all the crazy things we had just experienced. She checks her phone, and there is no missed call or voicemail on her phone. Very mysterious. I tell her of the ordeal, and then that was kind of it. After all that happened, I was so caught off guard by that house because I had never seen it before. And after that, I tried to find that house again. I never could. Even after I got my driver's license, I drove literally every street in that neighborhood and never saw it. I never really told anyone about it after that because it honestly sounds crazy. Over time, I just almost forgot that it had happened. Then one day, the memory randomly came to me. I think if I had been alone, I probably would have convinced myself that it didn't happen or that I imagined it. The only reason that I know that it was real is because I had someone with me who can attest to that fact that we shared that experience together. My family lived there for 16 years. We grew up there as kids. It's just so weird, and I have no explanation. I had never had any experience like that in my neighborhood before or after. The house we lived in had been haunted too, but that's for another time. 2. Right. So I've had a long past of weird, unexplainable activity happen to me in the UK. I won't state all on this post. I was born in Surrey and lived inside a cemetery for 5 years. With my dad, working as a cemetery manager. He would often dig graves, do funerals, and complete house searches on recently passed people. When I was 5, we moved into a house 30 minutes away, in which the wife and child had passed a while back and the husband was selling. The date we moved in was the 20-year anniversary of the wife's death, and my mother swears she saw a lady out of the corner of her eyes standing holding a sharp object that soon disappeared when she tried to get a better look. The room I was given was the child's room, and there were no problems with the rest of the house other than needing a good fix-up. Fast forward to 2016, and my father has been working in a new cemetery for over a decade, doing the same things such as grave digging and house searching. However, this is where it gets a bit more freaky. Around 3 or 4 a.m. on multiple nights a week, I would be jolted awake by the loud sound of a music box playing from my built-in cupboard opposite the bed. It would be loud enough to wake me up and would play the same tune constantly until I would get up to look for it. By the time I would get to the cupboard, it would slow itself down eventually to a stop and the room would go silent. This has happened multiple nights a week every week and still does to this day. I also had a dream a few years back in which I heard the music box. I thought I was awake, but I was dreaming, so I went to search for it. I opened the cupboard, and to my surprise, I found a deep hole in the back of the wall with the music coming from inside. I put my hand in and instantly got my arm grabbed by a black, nearly rotting hand with very long fingers, maybe 1.5 to 2 times larger than normal, and very sharp nails. This jolted me awake, and where I always closed my cupboard door, I awoke to find it wide open and my arm covered in long scratch marks. I have completely cleared out my cupboard and searched every nook and cranny, and there is no music box to be found. After about a month or so of hearing this music, I thought I was going mentally ill and assumed I was developing some form of hallucinogenic disorder. Until I managed to capture it on video on multiple occasions. All forms of explanation we have tried to come up with have always been easily disproved, and I am desperately looking for some form of answer. I don't personally completely believe in the paranormal, but the longer it goes on and the more stuff I experience, I can't seem to get the lingering thought that paranormal activity exists out of my head. 3. When you enter the apartment, you first see my bedroom. To the right there is a small hallway leading to the kitchen, and right between these two is another hallway going through the living room, which leads to the bathroom, and right next to it, on the right, is my brother's room. I always had this eerie feeling that something is chasing me down the hallways whenever I'd go and come back from the bathroom, or feeling something or someone really close to my face while I'm trying to sleep. When I was 15, my father and brother were in the hospital, so I was left alone with Mom. She was always busy cooking for them, visiting, and then working, so I was left alone most of the time. On that particular week, my mother was working night shift, which I hated, but nothing major happened in the last weeks. So I tried to be calm. I was in my brother's room playing on his PC till late hours, always grabbing all my stuff and sprinting down the halls back to my room. That Friday night, I decided to just sleep there, since I had everything with me, so again, I played on the PC until I got bored and decided to lay down. The room had a big bed placed directly close to the desk, a big dresser, and, the most important detail, those stupid empty bottles placed next to the desk that I was too scared to throw away. I got comfy and got lost in thoughts about my brother and wishing he'd be back home. I heard the floorboards creaking outside the door, but it was such a common sound it didn't faze me. Also, I had the door locked. My eyes were closed, and right when I was about to fall asleep, I heard this super loud bang on the floor next to the door. The bottles start shaking. One falls. My eyes open wide. I'm frozen in fear. I can't breathe for a minute or so. And as soon as I snap out of it, I fall asleep instantly. I woke up in the morning, but didn't remember anything until I saw Mom in the kitchen. I tried telling her, but she kept saying it's one of our neighbors, but no one lives underneath, and the guy above is old and drunk all the time. The sound happened in the room. I went back there, stood in the spot I heard it from, stumped as hard as I could, and the sound was identical. I told my brother, and he joked, saying the ghost didn't like me sleeping in his room. He also had creepy stuff happen to him, like hearing light scratching from the inside of his dresser, or things falling next to him. This used to be the apartment of my great-grandparents. Only met the great-grandma, she died when I was 4, and one time, years later, while visiting Grandma, I asked if she had any pics of her mother when she was young, since everyone says I look like her. Grandma pulls out pics and shows them to me, one by one, until we come across this picture of an old man in a coffin. I can't see his face, but when I look around the empty room around him, I realize it's kind of familiar. So I ask about it, and she replies with, "That's your great-granddad. He's in your bedroom. He died during summer, such a hot temperature. After 2 days, he started leaking. It got sunk into the floorboards and everything. Ugh." She spoke about it like it was nothing. I couldn't sleep, even though it's been almost 2 decades since he died at that point. His head in the picture was right where I was sleeping, and maybe I'm crazy, but maybe that's why I was feeling watched all these years. I don't know, but my mother changed the floorboards only when I turned 19, and until I moved out at 20, I haven't felt watched or chased down the halls anymore. I heard he was mean when he was alive, but I don't know, I haven't met him. I don't know why they had him in the house. I guessed it must have been normal for poor people from Europe, or at least my country. It was also normal to snap pictures of dead relatives back then. At least, that's what Grandma told me. Yes, I'm traumatized. Thank you for reading all this. 4. So my plot of land in Mark Twain National Forest and most of my neighbors' houses and land have been fairly active my whole life. We've seen Native American ghosts roaming hills of my grandma's house less than a mile down the road. We've seen my uncle, who had passed the week before, smoking on my parents' porch, and my mom watched her chair spin around. My other grandma's house will randomly smell like someone is brewing coffee, even though no one has ever made coffee in her house. We have a house with such a horrific history that has been such a hotbed for activity that most people who live in only last a few months before selling. My house alone, we have seen orbs, had pictures thrown, tons of noises and sounds. Hell, my ex brought a crucifix into the house after I asked her not to, and it wound up outside in the mud the next morning. I've had 2 people say they have seen what looked like a blue laser pointer zooming around the room, like it was just playing with them. My son says he sees shadows moving in his doorway at night. My wife had a freaky night where there was a lot of banging and even heard a car door slam. Separate, because it's more relevant, I had someone say they saw a dog that they could only best describe as a hellhound. A few days ago, my dog busted out of his fence and hasn't come back. So I've been going outside and whistling and driving around, just anything to find my dog. 2 nights ago, there was a bunch of dogs going nuts, and one of them sounded like ours, and it wasn't near the rest. This is at 2 a.m., but me and my wife started whistling, and the dogs kept going nuts. So we start walking in the direction of the dog that sounds like ours. The second we set foot off our property, everything goes dead quiet. I made a post talking about how weird it was, and one of my buddies jokingly replied, "Sounds like a skinwalker." I completely wrote it off as a joke and didn't really think about it. Tonight we are having problems trying to sleep, and out of nowhere, we hear a truck coming up our drive. I get up and check it out. No truck. I go and lay back in bed, and within 2 minutes we hear a few sets of loud, low rumbles. We weren't sure if it was something being moved or thunder or whatever, but we head outside, and our oldest son, 15, follows. We are walking around our property looking for anything to explain the noise. Not seeing any heat lightning, and the skies are completely clear, so we wrote off thunder. The dogs start going nuts again, so I go to whistle, but as soon as I am starting, I hear a mumble, but whistled anyway in my normal pattern. From the south side of my property, something whistles back in the exact same pattern, and my son asks if anyone else heard that mumbling. I said yeah, and had everyone kill their lights and shut up. I whistle again and get another response. This happened a few times, and some of them did sound like a bird, and our son is kind of laughing, assuming I'm communicating with a bird at 12:30 at night. I whistle one more time and get an exact copy of the pattern, but this time coming from the north side of the property. For reference, my neighbors are far enough away that I could yell at the top of my lungs, and the people in the directions we were hearing these noises from probably couldn't hear. I'm at a loss. I honestly don't know what to think. I'm not a disbeliever, but these are typically the types of stories I call BS on. I think something is using the fact that we're listening and searching for our dog at night to mess with us. 5. Something is following me when I'm walking around in the dark somewhere, but it's not always there. I just feel its presence. I feel that it is right behind me, and it gets into my mind. Every time it's following me, I see it in my mind. I can see it clearly with all the details. It's like 3 meters tall, wide upper body and head, no neck. Arms and legs are thin but very long, and it has long claw-like fingers and toes. It doesn't have a face, but a big mouth that reaches from its head down almost to the legs, and it has sharp teeth. Also, you can kind of see an outline of its bones pressing against the skin from the inside. It was totally black, like a shadow. Only the teeth were white. Also, it tells me that I should not turn around. I'm saying tell like that because it doesn't actually talk, and I don't hear words in my head or anything. I just feel that it doesn't want me to turn around. I never did. All this started happening when I was about 12. I'm turning 17 next week, and it's still there sometimes. I just don't understand why it stops me from turning around, if at the same time it lets me know how it looks. But I don't need to understand. I'd rather just cooperate, and I don't even want to risk thinking about what would happen if I don't. Also, something similar that happened last December. Me and a few buddies were running from the cops. It's unnecessary why. It was around midnight. We ran over a trail that led through the forest, but over the full length it was always no more than 5 meters into the woods. So on the left side there were always only a few trees separating us from our hometown, but on the right there was the forest. The whole time I had a similar feeling as stated in the story above. But I felt that it wasn't something bad, it just didn't want us in the woods. And there were multiple of them, but they were different looking. I saw them in my mind, wearing robes with the hood up. I didn't see their faces, only a slight white shine from their eyes. The robes were dark blue, almost black. They had their hands each in the opposite sleeve, so I couldn't see their hands, and the robe reached down to the ground. I didn't see them with my own eyes, but I didn't look into their direction anyways, because I felt that our presence was already disturbing enough. My buddies were too focused on where we could go so the cops won't find us, to realize what was going on. So basically, I haven't seen them ever, just like that thing that follows me. But they're there, and the ones in the robes are always in the woods when it's night. Hey everybody, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to Paranormal Stories. episode 282. And thank you very much to everybody who allowed me to use their stories in this video. If you'd please like the video and subscribe if you haven't already done so, I would appreciate it. Alrighty, let's see. Let's move right on to Hellfreezer's question of the day. Alrighty. Just as the sun rises, and the mighty river flows courageously, and the wild horses ride unrelentingly across the terrain. How do you like your eggs? Personally, I like them every way you can do them. I like them scrambled, poached. I love them with French toast, the savory kind. I like them in omelets. I like them fried. It's all good. But do you have a favorite? Whatever that may be. Oh, one thing I haven't tried that I would like to try is Eggs Benedict. It sounds quite nice. But do you have a favorite type of eggs? Let me know what you think in a comment below. Oh, and non-egg vegan substitutes do still count, because they're getting really good, from what I hear. Okay, and with that, I'm going to head off for now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourself.